In our last video, we created a function that we can call anytime we want to compare two values and then return a message letting the player know if their guess was correct or not. We can now begin coding our gameplay by creating a way for the player to input a numerical guess into the chat bar. We haven't done this before. To do it, we will need a chat command block from the player folder. We can use the word guess as this chat command, but the player needs to input a number as well. For example, if the player wants to guess the number 25, we want them to type guess 25. This means we will need a variable to hold the value that they will guess, since their guess will likely change every time. Instead of creating a variable from the variable folder, we are going to add it directly to our chat command. When we click the plus sign after our chat command, we get a dropdown and an automatically generated variable called num, an abbreviation for number. We can click the dropdown and choose Rename Variable. Since this will be the player's guess, let's name it Player Guess. Now the player can begin this command by typing guess in the chat bar, followed by any number. Once they enter their guess, we only want the game to proceed if the player still has guesses remaining or if they haven't won yet. This means we need to check if the game isn't over. Let's get an if block from the logic folder. For the condition, we want to see if our game is not over. From the logic folder, we can add the not block. We can place our game over variable from the variable folder inside the not block. There are two possible outcomes if the game is not over and the player enters a guess. Either they get the answer correct or they get it wrong. Since there are two possibilities, we can use an if-else block from the logic folder. Let's add that inside our if block. Since the first possibility is the player getting the answer right, in the logic folder, we can use the condition that has an equal sign and add it to our new if statement. Add the variable player guess to the first value and the variable agent number in the second spot. If the player guess is equal to the agent number, they got it right. We want to tell the player the outcome, but we need to test these two values to see if that is the case. That is exactly what we created our test guess function to do. We can start by adding a show title block from the player folder. Now, we want to call the test guess function to compare our two values and decide what to say. Let's get the call test guess block from our function folder and add it to the title block. When we call the test guess function to compare two values, we need to let it know which two values to compare. In this case, we want to compare the player guess with the agent number. We can see that the block has spaces for two values. We can duplicate the player guess value above and put it in the first value. Then duplicate the agent number and place it in the second value. These variables will now pass the numbers they are storing to the test guess function. The test guess function will make the comparison and return a message. The show title block will now show that message on screen. Since, in this case, the answer was correct, we also want the game to end. We can add the set variable block from the variable folder and choose our game over variable from the dropdown. We now want the game over status to be true, so we can use true from the logic folder in this block. We now have a code that will allow the player to enter a number, compare our player guess and agent number, and return a message if the player is correct. In our next video, We will complete our code by determining what will happen if the player is incorrect.